A red suitcase was lying on the side of the road. Some road workers noticed it by chance, and when they opened it, a surprise was waiting. Inside the suitcase was the body of a young woman. As it turned out, she had suffered one of the most brutal deaths imaginable. Valerie Reyes was born in the small town of New Rochelle, New York. She had 3 younger brothers she was very close to. Valerie was always bright, cheerful, and outgoing. She had many friends. She and her mother were like best friends and always shared everything. There were no secrets between them. She was very talented. She sang and painted beautifully. Valerie was an aspiring tattoo artist and looked up to her brother, who was already an experienced tattooist. They even dreamed of opening their own tattoo studio. For now, she worked at a bookstore. In January 2018, 24-year-old Valerie met 26-year-old Javier da Silva, originally from Venezuela, on a dating site. In 2017, he had fled the country fearing for his life, never finishing college. He moved to New York and got a job as a waiter at a restaurant. Valerie and Javier went on a few dates, liked each other, and began dating. But their romance didn't last long, about 3 months. Javier had already suggested they move in together and had mentioned marriage. He was pushing Valerie, which scared her. At that moment, she wasn't ready for such serious steps. It felt like things were moving too fast, so she suggested they break up. Her family had met Javier a couple of times. They thought he seemed nice and polite, and he treated Valerie well, but he was too persistent and didn't take no for an answer. Javier didn't like the idea of breaking up, and he tried to hold on to her. He kept texting her and ran into her repeatedly, at the store or on the street. One day, in September 2018, Javier called Valerie and said that he had accidentally used her bank card on an online store and wanted to meet to give the money back. She reacted negatively to the story. She believed Javier was stalking her and wouldn't let go, trying to rekindle their relationship. But Valerie didn't want to go back to such a clingy suitor. She complained to a friend about her ex and asked her to help sort out the card and money issue. The friend met Javier herself, talked to him, and asked him to stop bothering Valerie. Javier responded to her words and stopped contacting her. Valerie finally felt relaxed and more at peace. On January 24, 2019, Javier wrote to one of his ex-girlfriends, claiming he caught Valerie in bed with a neighbor. This, of course, wasn't true. There was no way she could have been at his place. They had broken up and weren't speaking. Why he wrote it remained unclear. But at the time, Valerie had indeed started dating someone new. On January 27, 2019, Valerie went to a family celebration and had a great time. On January 28th, after work at the store, she came home and called her mother in panic. She was screaming that she was afraid that someone was going to kill her. She told her mother she was having anxiety attacks and didn't feel safe in her apartment because she had heard of recent terrible murders of women in their own homes. Valerie realized she could be the next victim. Then her mother asked her who she was afraid of, but Valerie didn't give a clear answer. Her mother tried to calm her down. They said goodbye, and around midnight, Valerie texted her mom, saying she felt much better and was going to sleep because she was exhausted. That was the last message from Valerie. The next day, January 29th, Valerie didn't show up for work. That was very unusual for her. She was always responsible and never even late. She also hadn't warned anyone in advance. Valerie had worked at the bookstore for about 2 years and loved her job. She wouldn't have just disappeared. Her manager was unable to reach her by phone. That same evening, Valerie was supposed to attend a family dinner, but she never came. Her mother became increasingly worried, especially remembering the disturbing conversation from the night before. Valerie wasn't answering calls. They went straight to voicemail. Her family kept calling and texting her non-stop. They were genuinely concerned. They began posting her photos on social media and called all her friends, looking for clues about where she might be. But no one knew where she was. On the morning of January 30th, her family went to the police and reported Valerie missing. Her loved ones immediately pointed to her ex-boyfriend, Javier, and asked police to investigate him carefully. The police searched Valerie's apartment for clues, but found nothing suspicious. There were no signs of a struggle or disorder. However, small bloodstains were found on a pillowcase in the bathroom. The investigators were not alarmed. They assumed she might have cut herself or had a nosebleed and didn't think much of it. Still, the police launched a search and requested data from her cell provider. It turned out Valerie's phone had been switched to airplane mode on the night of January 28th to 29th at around 3 a.m. and was never reactivated. Someone had also accessed her iCloud, browsing photos, videos, messages, and content on her phone. This seemed highly suspicious and alarming. They also found that around 5 a.m. on January 29th, someone used Valerie's debit card to withdraw thousands of dollars. A TM camera footage showed a man taking the cash. He drove up in a black Honda, took the money, and drove off. Valerie was not visibly present. From other surveillance cameras, investigators were able to identify the license plate. The car had been rented by none other than her ex-boyfriend Javier, whom the family had already warned police about. At that point, Javier became the prime suspect, and police began focusing on him. Detectives obtained a search warrant for his home, but found no evidence there. However, cameras near his building showed that at 10:50 p.m. on January 28th, he left his home driving the black Honda. During the investigation, police confirmed that his phone had been near Valerie's apartment. A check of her phone showed she had neither called nor texted him. She hadn't asked him to come, so the question remained, what was he doing near her place around midnight, uninvited? After that, Javier switched his phone to airplane mode, and his location stopped being tracked. At 6:30 a.m., he switched it back on. By then, he was near Harrison, Connecticut. Then, at 7:30, his phone pinged in Greenwich, also in Connecticut. Only at 9:43 a.m. did he return home to Queens, New York, as confirmed by surveillance cameras. The footage showed that Javier was wearing different clothes than the night before. He was carrying a large duffel bag. A few minutes later, he left his house again, but without the bag. It was also revealed that on the evening before Valerie disappeared, Javier had posted an old photo of the two of them to Instagram. While police were investigating, Valerie's family and friends were handing out flyers and searching actively, but it all led nowhere. On February 5th, a week after Valerie disappeared, there was a break in the case. Road workers found a red suitcase on the side of the road. When they opened it, they immediately called the police. Inside was a woman's body. Her hands and feet were tied, her mouth duct taped. She was wearing an unbuttoned shirt and jeans, but no shoes. She had a serious head injury. On February 6th, the victim was officially identified as 24-year-old missing woman Valerie Reyes. Her loved ones confirmed it was her. The coroner determined that it was murder. She had been struck in the head with a blunt object and then sealed alive into the suitcase, where she died of suffocation in horrible agony. Police were convinced that Javier was responsible, but they had no direct evidence, only that he had her bank card. So they arrested him on those grounds and charged him. In his wallet, they found her card and ID. During interrogation, Javier claimed he had found the card and ID in a bar. This sounded highly implausible. Detectives told him they knew he'd been near Valerie's home that night. Then Javier responded, "Yeah, I drank a lot that day. I might have been there. I don't remember." Investigators showed him photos and told him what happened to Valerie. That's when Javier broke down. He confessed and began speaking. According to him, on the evening of January 28th, he went to see her at her invitation. He claimed they had rough consensual sex, during which she accidentally fell, hit her head on the floor, and lost consciousness. Javier said he panicked and didn't know what to do. He tried to help her. He attempted mouth-to-mouth and chest compressions, but nothing worked. He didn't call the police because he thought they'd blame him, so he made a plan. He tied her up, taped her mouth, put her in a suitcase, and disposed of the body. But this only raised more questions. Why tie up and tape the mouth of someone who, according to him, was already unresponsive? Javier said he knew the police would come after him, so he withdrew $4,350 from her account to help the investigation, according to him. He threw her phone off a bridge into a river. He thoroughly cleaned the car. No evidence was found there. He also logged into her iCloud and browsed her photos and documents. To access her bank account, he used her fingerprint. The police did not believe Javier's story. He was charged with kidnapping, resulting in the death of Valerie. It turned out he had not only taken all the money from her account, but also stolen her laptop and computer, and even took photos of them. When Javier's roommate asked where the devices came from, he said he'd just found them on the street. That was highly suspicious, and the roommate didn't believe him, but he chose not to get involved. Javier's DNA was found both on the red suitcase and on Valerie's body, under her nails, on her chest, and in the genital area. Prosecutors in court argued that he was obsessed with her. The prosecutor presented his theory of what happened. Javier drove to Valerie's home. There were no signs of forced entry, which suggested he probably still had a key and let himself in. Valerie was asleep and didn't hear him enter her bedroom. There, he attacked her and attempted to rape her. A struggle followed, during which he struck her in the head with a blunt object, causing her to lose consciousness. Frightened, Javier tied her up and taped her mouth so she couldn't scream or escape. Then he placed her in a suitcase, carried it out of the apartment, loaded it into his car, and disposed of the body, dumping the suitcase far from her home. On February 5, 2020, in court, Javier pleaded guilty to kidnapping resulting in death. He expressed regret and apologized to Valerie's family. His attorneys claimed he was suffering from severe depression after their breakup, was in an emotionally unstable state, and under the influence of psychoactive substances, which made him lose control. During the trial, letters were read from friends and relatives, insisting that Javier was a good person, who had merely snapped and made a terrible mistake. But Valerie's family didn't believe his remorse or excuses. Her mother called him a selfish, greedy, and heartless person. On September 3, 2021, Javier was sentenced to 30 years in prison. It was later revealed that he had been living in the U.S. illegally. He had entered the country on May 8, 2017, through the Visa Waiver Program, and was supposed to leave by August 5, 2017, but he never did. After serving his sentence, he will be deported to Venezuela. If you found this story interesting, make sure to subscribe to the channel. There are many more shocking cases ahead. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. Let's discuss it together.